know the goal here is to get to where we just go public.
Right. Yeah, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I don't know if hell is the right first topic.
Well, at this point, it'd be the third. So, oh, yeah, for a live. Yeah.
Yeah. It might be a way to get a bunch of comments.
Yeah. Hell. You were just talking about people's different understandings of hell, and you're going to get into kind of your understanding of it.
Yeah. So one type of hell, I guess, maybe you'd say, in my experience. So I'm just going to say a bunch of stuff like it's true, so that I don't have to keep saying my sense and my whatever.
Yeah.
That the human psyche has access to hell realms. So, for example, we are souls, and we have psyches, and our psyches have realms or access to realms similar to how you have a Mac top or you have a whatever Windows computer or something, and then your computer has access to all this stuff, right? And so if you said, and again, I don't understand computers enough to really make the analogy. It's really complicated here, but you know, you can get on the internet, and let's say you use a certain browser, and then let's say that browser has access to this set of content, websites and whatever. This other browser has access to a different set. And what I'm getting at is the human psyche working in that way, where, you know, there's you sitting there in that room and there's me sitting here in this room, but our consciousness and our psyches have access to all these different domains, planes, realms, and in the same way that your computer screen shows, you know, can display content from the website or from the browser or from the software program, et cetera, that you're accessing. You know, right now I can shift my psyche around and I can experience different realms, different planes, and they're going to show up and register in at least in my ego awareness, right? In a certain way. And then it's okay. Well, what am I accessing, right? Just like on your computer, it's like, well, wait a minute. What browser are you in? What website are you on? What software program are you using? Versus, well, it's on your screen, it must be some kind of absolute truth, right? That's just silly. And then it's okay, well, you know, how do we get more and more of a sense of that and how that works? And so I'm saying all that to kind of, you know, so if you put hell in that model, right? How does hell fit into that? And so one way it gets talked about is, well, hell is a realm, or there are hell realms. So reality, so to speak, is organized into realms. And then you hear, like, generally speaking, kind of a hierarchical model of realms, from lower realms to higher realms. And the idea that the human soul or the human psyche can travel and or get stuck in and think that their whole self or part of their self is existent in a realm, versus that their psyche's just visiting that realm, right?
Yeah.
And or that realm is the all. Or we can conflate one realm with another realm. So a lot of opportunity for stuff to go wrong. Right? A lot of opportunity to not have this perfect, clear understanding of the whole system at once, right?
Right.
Which generally speaking would be the God perspective. If you could, even like if right now you could see the entire internet, you had an absolute understanding of how it all worked, and you could see what, which of course none of us have, but some of us have much more of an understanding of how computer systems work than others,
Yeah.
So there's some really important principles in all that. One of the principles is it possible to peer into or experience a realm and not be caught there, not be identified, to be conscious there, to see it for what it is, right? So sort of to trip, let's say, if going into an altered state or going into a different realm than 3D cognitive rational linear spacetime is tripping, if that's going into an altered state, to what extent can you go into that altered state but not lose touch with 3D cognitive linear spacetime? Or to what extent can you know I'm tripping right now? So another analogy, if you put virtual reality glasses on, you're probably losing touch at least with the visual spatial awareness around you, right? But how completely gone are you in that virtual reality versus how much do you sit and be aware, I'm sitting here looking at a virtual reality matrix, right? So this kind of discerning, are you sitting in a movie theater watching a movie, or is that, real life going on around you? Are you a character in that movie or are you not?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, duh, it's like, yeah, but it's very, very, very powerful. We watch movies and are compelled by it because we literally place ourselves in that, and experience it. We empathize and we identify and we're moved by it, and we take the journey and we suspend disbelief and we identify with this character against that character, and we cry and we laugh and we celebrate. And of course, the idea is, well, how's that different than what we're doing with our own, with what we call the real life? How's it different?
Yeah.
Because what we know is that I can be very into this guy and have him be the protagonist and be really focused and excited about his adventures and his wins and losses, right? Or I can get really bored and lose interest, or I can start to even think he's actually a bad guy. And this is all stuff that, in the same way that I might do it with some character in a movie, or I might do it about Jeff, I can do that same thing about myself, which is just kind of a strange, you would think that, no, that's all like automatic, or that all happens in some kind of natural, and it's like, no, it's just as plastic and variable and can get just as fucked up and distorted as your views about anyone else. We're no more clear about ourselves than anyone else.
Yeah, right.
And of course, the whole question of, well, wait, what is self then, right? What is self actually, and what is good and what is bad, and what fucking realm is this anyway? And this is not my beautiful house. Kind of, question comes up.
Yeah.
So again, if you say, well, if that's kind of a model of how the psyche works, and again, I just want to say, that's a model of how the psyche works based on a certain level of awareness about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, it's not some kind of absolute explanation, because I think that there are, who knows how inhibited and limited, even like the quantum physics perspective. It's like, okay, but that's still a perspective.
Yeah.
even though kind of the nature of it is it's about non-perspectable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, hey, there's a certain way of looking at this where you understand, it's like, hey, the earth's round, it's not flat. It's like, well, there's a truth to that, but then you can go into more dimensions and then it's not just round, or it becomes flat again and it gets really complicated. Okay, but that said, if we say, well, if that's the model, where's hell? And I think it makes sense that, well, yeah, hell is a realm. And generally speaking, there's a hierarchical model of lower realms to higher realms, and that our psyche, our soul via our psyche can be experiencing hell realms at any given moment. If you break your leg right now, there's a bit of a hell realm showing up in your psyche, because the experience of pain, the experience of the deconstruction or the destruction of your body, it all starts to flood your mind, right? And of course, if you started amping up the intensity of that physical injury, if you broke both legs, if you and then you also, you're in a car accident, you actually broke both legs, and then actually the car's on fire, and now it's like there's more and more of a hell realm surfacing in your awareness.
Yeah.
And you're going to scream in terror, and it'd be pretty safe to say, like, that guy's in hell right now, even though maybe he's still alive and he didn't, physically go down, into some other realm and, into the underworld, or he didn't. It's like, no, it's all here already, right? That Hilbert space idea where there's all this stuff occupying the same space, the same 3D space. And, our psyche can shift into seeing the hell realm. And so it's a very different kind of model, right? As I sit here, again, the idea that just like with light, right? There's let's say there's full spectrum light, let's say in this room. But if I put on, yellow tinted glasses, then I'm gonna only be seeing the yellow, bandwidth of the light vibrations, right? If I put on red ones, it's like, hey, now there's red light. And it's like, no, there was red light all along, and there was yellow light all along. It's just that I'm filtering stuff out.
Tuned in.
What's that?
Just tuned in to that.
Yeah.
That spectrum.
Yeah. So let's just say hypothetically, the red light is hell. And then there's this progression: the red light, the orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And if I put on the violet shades, it's like, I've gone to heaven. I'm in the, I'm seeing nothing but purple, and of course the purple isn't just purple light, it's a higher frequency vibration. And the experience in the purple light gives me an experience of oneness and beauty and love, and then, take those shades off and put on the yellow ones, and it's like, now it's more third chakra, solar plexus, personal self. And what I'm getting at is, okay, these levels of consciousness and these literally these different dimensions and different realms that one is experiencing because that's what's going on in their psyche. They're seeing reality different depending on the lens, right? And so I'm saying, okay, as far as hell, it's like, oh shit, you got the red glasses on, And the experience via those glasses is this terrible, terrible suffering, right? This terrible evilness, this terrible destruction, this wrongness, etc. It's like, all these things that go on in our psyche about hell.
Yeah.
And of course it's easy to say that, like, look, yeah, we in the same way that you have a certain idea of look, if you're going to do something that's very dangerous, then it's easy to say, like, look, if you crash, or if you fall, or if you fuck that up, there's going to be hell to pay, right? And it's like, what is the hell? It's like, well, if you're fucking around with that grenade, and that thing goes off, like, there's going to be hell to pay. Like, you're going to be in hell. And that's different than if you don't believe in God, then when you die, you're going to go down to hell, right? It's just more putting it in the immediate sphere of, like, look, even if it seems fun to go on, to drive 180 miles an hour on that motorcycle, you're risking hell. More so than you're risking hell if you're just, riding 20 miles an hour on that motorcycle. Like, you're playing with fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there, if you kind of take that principle of, okay, yeah, there's such a thing as risk and reward. There's such a thing as consequence. And there's nothing religious or spiritual about that. That's just true here in daily, again, cognitive, rational, linear space-time, physical life. So again, if you take that model that we can sit here and experience that, these different places, you're sitting there, you're safe in your room, and your mind might be at a certain level or kind of anchored in a certain realm. And so you're experiencing reality to be that, and self to be, a certain thing that correlates with that realm. And then you get a phone call, and your whole family, was killed in whatever. It's like, well, you're still just sitting in that room, like, what? It's all good. And it's like, no, you're going to start going into a different realm.
Yeah.
In your mind, you're no longer going to be as present in that room, doing your thing in that room. You're going to go into this place. And you might go into a terrible place, right? Terrible grief, terrible, you probably would be traumatized by the news. You'd be confronted with the death realms, and Sky'd come in and be like, what the hell happened? And you'd probably look,
shell shocked. Be shell shocked.
Yeah, right. And it's like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, Jeff is in a different, place right now. He's not as much in the present on cognitive linear spacetime. And it's like, well, where did you go and why? And it's like, well, because of this news that came, and then, so you're in that terrible place. Sky's trying to sort of find you and meet you and figure out how to help you and support you, whatever. And then you get another phone call. Oh, sorry, that was, never mind. That was a wrong number. We gave you the. It's like, well, you're not going to just immediately come out of those realms, because you went there, right, into those realms. And now coming right back out of them is not going to be immediate. And one of the reasons I'm giving that example is, we do it. You can say, well, I got thrown into those realms by the news of my, family being killed. It's like, yeah, but the news came and then you responded that way.
Yeah.
Which is an important thing.
Well, it's just what you were saying, that like everything existing in one place at once.
Yes.
Yeah. That just kind of, and it's like, you have this catalyst or this impetus, and then it's like what dimension or what air, where do you go? And it's kind of like what the catalyst does is it just makes you hyper aware of like one particular thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so it brings up questions of, for example, truth, right? Like, well, what's truth? Another principle that we can talk about more with that is, once you go into a realm with your attention, it's not like it's sticky. You know what I mean? Like, you can get caught there. So for you to just come back out to, no, never mind, your family's fine. It's like, well, wait a minute, right? You might be traumatized, even if it turns out it was a joke or it was a wrong number. You might be traumatized by the event.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. And then some people will say, well, what was the trauma? The trauma was that you saw, you went to a hell realm. And it's like, you shouldn't have gone there because you weren't ready to see that hell realm. And now you saw that hell realm and now you can't unsee it.
We should, like, I want to come back to that because I'm just going to say something that's like not specifically hell realm. But it was interesting is that I hadn't thought about it this way. The trauma isn't even that like you went to a bad thing. The trauma is like, or bad, quote unquote bad or threatening. It's that the trauma that you picked one over all the others.
If I'm following you, there's the question
unconsciously, but
why did you pick it, right?
Yeah. But there's like there's something that happens in that selective split, either intentionally or unintentionally, but you could ostensibly have split to something good, but the trauma of not recognizing all the feelings in the moment is there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If so, are you saying,
let's say
it's not just where you went, but it's what you left?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of times with clients, I'm very aware that, okay, I'm aware of a dimension they left. It's very obvious they're not present there. And I'm trying to get them to come back.
Yeah.
And they often don't even know they left it.
Right.
Because kind of the nature of it, if it's trauma, you don't even remember that dimension exists anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in Minnesota in mid-February, you don't even remember what warmth is. Yeah. Like you kind of forget that outdoors can be kind of pleasant. If you get enough days below zero in a row,
the world's against you.
Yeah, the world's against you, and you forget that it can be otherwise.
Yeah.
It's almost traumatizing to hop on a plane. I go to California for Christmas often. I practically freeze to death between my car and getting inside the airport door.
Yeah.
And then I walk outside the airport door in Orange County, and it's like, what the hell?
To me, like, it's the jet bridges. Like like the jet bridge on the way back to Minnesota versus the jet bridge home, and it's so frightening. It's like, because you forget, like, coming from California to Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
You get all the way up to getting off the plane in Minnesota, and then it's like, oh God, I did it again. Like, it's scary. But I didn't mean to derail too much because we're kind of focusing on one realm of the psyche that we go to under threat, or but I hadn't really thought about like you said, what's left, what's kind of discounted or split off from.
Yeah.
And it could just be an alternate reaction to a catalyst.
Yeah. Yeah, and another important part of that is not only because it's super complicated, and again, I'm sure infinitely more complicated than I even have a inkling of. But in the same way that I think that it's structured in a hierarchy, which is one of the ways it's structured. So you can say, well, this experience is way more awful from our perspective than this experience up here at this level, right? But there's also, look, this experience is way more awful than if you have this one and this one talking to each other, right? So the more dimensions that are showing up at one time, the less, not only the less lost are you in any particular dimension, but they interact with each other in a way that mediates them. And then also, it's okay, again, can I experience this level and just take a trip in there, but know that I'm just down in a, this lower level. I'm not, it's kind of like the difference of, am I just running around playing paintball right now with my buddies, or am I in a war situation where, like two very different things, right? And it's kind of like that. It's like, can I be down in a hell realm, but I'm aware I'm just shamanically journeying into that realm. I'm this isn't the same thing as if I really am in a state where I think that that's me in there.
Yeah.
So there's all these different kind of parameters that are happening at any given moment. But again, it's such a game changer if there's any truth to this kind of model, it ceases to be, where do I go and what do I find and how do I, and you start recognizing, no, it's all here right now. There's no getting rid of anything. There's no running away from anything. It's like, well, wait, what's the game then? It's like, well, the game is, in simple terms, it's like, well, consciousness does a lot of stuff. When you bring consciousness into any of these realms, any of these dimensions, any of these planes, then you then you become more awake to that realm, that plane, that dimension. And in the becoming awake, then you start to be able to place it in the overall map, so to speak. And you become less and less lost. And you become less and less identified. And you become less and less absolutely terrified or absolutely crushed. Or you could say, you have more tolerance for being absolutely terrified, or more tolerance for being absolutely crushed, or more tolerance for absolutely enraged, because you just have more and more of an understanding of, okay, this is what's, in the same way that an adult at an amusement park, can ride the roller coaster, can go in the haunted house, can see the clown, et cetera, and knows what it is that's going on in a way that the 5-year-old, is going to be excited and or freaked out by stuff that the adult is just having fun with. And then just what comes to mind there is, again, but I think there's this overall, like there is such a thing as truth, or as, because you could say, well, then it doesn't matter. Like I might as well just go, on some, careless, whatever, shooting spree, or go steal a bunch of shit, whatever, and then just go down in a big, what's the term? Go out in a big ball of flame or whatever, go out.
I muted myself. Go out in a blaze of glory.
Go out in a blaze of glory, yeah. And it's like, because who matters? I mean, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. It's all just a video game that we're playing. And it's like, well, wait a second. My sense is that'd be fine if we're just playing paintball or if we're just playing a video game. Okay, maybe I can just decide to do this Blaze of Glory thing, and who cares? It was fun, and everyone is going to be okay afterwards. I think there's stuff that matters. I think there is a general, I don't think it's all a video game that doesn't matter at all. I think it matters. There's some sense of mattering, but I think we're all, that's one of the things we're all trying to figure out and wake up to is what does matter.
Yeah.
What doesn't. And obviously what matters changes at each level. And I think generally speaking, the higher levels matter more, if you will. But that's not to negate the lower levels. It's just that I think generally speaking, there is such a thing as truth, and there is such a thing as meaning, and there is such a thing as beingness, and so the movement towards that matters, and because the more you get lost in, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like, look, if there's all these dimensions and planes and realms, and none of them are absolutely real, let's say that's true. Some are more real than others, right? More. Like if we say that you looking at me on this computer screen is less real than if you were sitting here in my room looking at me, right? But if you said that sitting here in this room looking at me is just another level of, it's not absolute, right? It's still a structured, many layers of latency experience.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So it's like, well, what's the ultimate goal, or what is it that matters? Well, I think what matters is how lost are you in the experience versus being conscious of the experience. So a little bit different than just, I want to reach higher levels. It's not just, I want to put the purple glasses on.
Right.
It's can you be conscious in the purple and the blue and the yellow, and even in the red? I think that's more, and then that gets into the upward path and the downward path and all that kind of stuff. And again, a similar analogy is, it's like, I like distance events. And so running a marathon or doing an Ironman or something, you can look at that from a certain perspective and think, well, that's just masochistic, ridiculousness. Why would I put myself through that? And it's like, well, because you could say, Lance, you don't have to do this, and it's like, I want to, or I feel compelled to. And it's like, why? It's like, well, because I'm trying to have this certain experience that is some kind of, it has meaning, it has symbolic meaning. There's a mythology to it. My soul's journey to do a certain thing seems to be leading me towards, that specific type of thing. And it's like, and to a certain extent, yeah, there has to be, just like watching a movie, you got to do some suspension of disbelief, and you got to allow yourself to think it's more real than it really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had to let myself think that me finishing the Ironman, it's like in my head, the fate of the cosmos, was hanging in the balance, and it's like, yes, I'm aware it wasn't. I'm aware that even my friends, let alone my family, would still love me, even if I dropped out of the race. But to have the experience, I had to sort of set it up like that in my head. And in the same way that I did that, but I was quite aware I was doing it, there's the notion that there's other things I'm doing in my life where I don't realize it's really that same kind of deal.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is,
Yeah, totally. Just not aware of like what that narrative is.
Right.
Even though you're acting it out already.
Yeah.
And it's
like
so
the podcast, the fate of the universe was really hanging on this podcast.
Right, this one, especially since it's about hell.
This episode.
We're on the precipice.
If we don't get this exactly right.
Yeah. There is it's kind of when you're talking about the projections onto other people, as far as like I'm the protagonist, they're the villains, or whatever that narrative is, like to be more aware of the different levels of truth to that, like you're describing, makes you a more active part, for one, or at least like a consciously active part. And it's just there's a just I think we should probably get into like more of like the imaginal journeying aspect of it, because it's like a higher level of truth than the ego identified, like I'm the protagonist, everyone's the villain. To actually be aware of that narrative and when we're occupying it or identified with it. Because like we do it with like politics, right? Where there is some narrative we have about how we are being worked upon, or how things are structured against us, but to actually experience that imaginally, I think would like shift how that's felt, or like it would become more of like a frequency rather than like a maximized window.
Yeah.
So there's all the trying to use some of the terms he used, but there's just something about actually like stepping into that role, like you're describing with your with your Iron Man, like I am fighting the good fight against the universe. That brings out how many of those things are unconscious.
Yeah.
And there's something we talked a while, like and being aware of like what you're anchoring in or what you're orienting to. Because like because there's a different thing. Like if we're just thinking about like how difficult and hard something is, and not acknowledging our own character as part of that, like we're anchored to something that's external, and like there's just like thinking about we've talked about, like we're like the current political landscape is hell then, because we're not recognizing where we are in it.
Yeah.
However small that may be, because we want to have some feeling that like the narrative, we're a bigger part of that narrative with what we do. I'm trying to get, is that kind of making sense, how I'm trying to relate it to that? That if we're stepping into that actual imaginal role is like a good step away from orienting and anchoring to something external.
Yeah, I think tell me if I'm on track. It's like it's more direct. The external but let me present a model and then tell me if this speaks to what you're talking about. So if there's the idea that at any given moment, whether by yourself or with someone else, right? Let's say if I'm by myself sitting in this room, and then let's say, okay, I can be just completely focused on the external room and disconnected from my inner self where the imaginal stuff's going on. And again, there's the let me just say this model again. Let's say there's the physical 3D linear space-time cognitive rational experience of what's external to me, meaning an individual saying what's external to me. And that's a domain, if you will. I tend to use the word domain as because it's like, okay, wait, plane, realm, dimension, what, how does that, and then domain's another word, and it's like, what the fuck? I tend to use the word domain as those are all domains. Some people say, no, those are all dimensions and domains is one of the dimensions. And some people say, no, they're all realms, different types of realms. But so I use domain. So there's a domain, which is the 3D physical world around me. And right now I'm looking at this room. But then, as you know, it's like, well, wait, what's going on in me? What do I feel in my hand? And that's in me, right? What do I feel in how's my stomach feel? Do I have a headache or not? Do I have a sore tooth? It's like, well, that's all in me. And I need to make a differentiation. It's like, oh, my foot feels like really sore and whatever. It's like, well, is there something going on with your foot? Is your shoe too small? Is there is there something down there biting your foot? I have a stabbing pain in my stomach. It's like, well, am I having some intestinal issues? Is there indeed something poking my stomach, right? Which sounds corny, but we're constantly having to discern this, and we're constantly making errors, Okay, but then there's my mental space of, well, what's going on in there? And I can rationalize, and maybe I'm trying to do some mathematical configurations. And it's like, okay, but then a big, huge shift from there is, what if I go into the imaginal? And it's like, okay, wait a second, we're talking about another big domain shift there. So it's not just external, it's not just my mental, emotional, physical. It's yet another domain, which is the imaginal. And the imaginal is the land of shamanic, alchemical, what a lot of people would think is religious or pagan or magical type of experience, right? Certainly mythological and archetypal. Okay, so that model. Oh, and then I just want to say, and then this idea of well, wait, what's the conscious? And I'm saying, rather paradoxically, consciousness is outside of all that, seeing all that from the outside and able to see, well, that's that domain, and that's that domain, and that's that domain. But then paradoxically, it's also inside of all that, because we're using this inside outside, which is a three-dimensional term. That's why it's paradoxical as far as you're trying to look at it three-dimensional. But so if I go into my inner self, what a lot of people mean is into the conscious inner self that is simultaneously outside. Okay, so but if that's the model, then what I hear you speaking to is the idea that Carl Jung was experiencing or speaking to when he was talking about the psyche, which he was calling the imaginal, the psyche. And he was saying the psyche is real, more real than what I'm thinking is external reality, and more real than my cognitive, rational, emotional experience. The real is in there. And one analogy that can be used that is and the only reason I'm going to say it's one that I came up with is that to say, so take it with a grain of salt versus it was Carl Jung's analogy. This idea of we have our skin, and then we have our muscles, and we have our bones, and we have our digestive system and our nervous system. And if you said, well, which one's real or which one's primary or whatever, it's like, well, they're all interrelated, but the digestive is pretty damn important, because initially you got to take food into the digestive, and then the digestive brings the nutrients and brings the energy from the nutrients, etc., into the musculoskeletal. And so if you take the digestive out, you're done. Now, of course, if you remove the musculoskeletal from the digestive, you're done also. But evolutionarily, it started with a snake, right? It starts with the digestive.
Yeah.
The snake is sort of just a digestive system,
Yeah.
So that kind of primariness, right?
Yeah.
That everything that is happening here started in the digestive, and everything that's happening in my cognitive rational started in the imaginal. And so to go back to, well, wait a second, let's look at what's going on in the imaginal. You're going back towards the source. Okay, so as I'm sitting here, there's also the idea that, or in alignment with that, what I'm saying, what I'm going to experience about this room I'm in starts in the imaginal, is filtered through my cognitive, rational, and emotional and physical, right? And then not only is my experience of the room going to be affected by that, but I'm going to affect the room. I'm going to bring certain energies into the room that's going to literally change the room. And whether I decide to change the room because I'm going to rearrange the furniture, right? Or I'm going to just have a certain emotional vibe pumping out in the room, or I'm going to turn the heater up, or I'm going to run around and do a bunch of exercise that's going to influence the room, because there's going to be heat generated from the exercise, and maybe I'm going to work out long enough without showering to where I'm going to affect the smell in the room. Like there's this impact, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave dead skin cells all over the room. I'm going to eat stuff and then create trash, and it's like, well, geez, we have this huge impact, right?
Yeah.
The footprint. So again, back to what I hear you saying, it's like, okay, but then you and I together, it's like, okay, well, now we're both affecting whatever space you want to talk about. So if you take society at large as what's the right word, conglomerate, or as a communal creation, a co-creation.
Yeah.
Right. In the same way that you and I are making a co-creation with regard to this podcast. And it's like, well, each of us is contributing to the creation of our culture, to the creation of and then of course, I think it gets all the way down to we're co-creating the weather. We're co-creating astral or astronomical activity. So that there's that idea that literally the external world, even the physical universe, is an outpicturing or a result of the imaginal workings, that's primary, and that the physical universe is created by and fed by the imaginal workings. And then of course the next step is, well, okay, well, what's determining the imaginal workings, right? Because the human ego is quick to go, it's me, I'm creating and it's like, all right, take it easy. No, no ego, you're way further down the line. You know? And then the idea would be, well, it's something beyond what we know.
Just eating popcorn.
Yeah.
Spectator at best.
Yeah. And then when you get real about it, you're actually just spectating yourself eating popcorn.
Oh my God. Yeah. You're not even actually doing that.
No. You're just having thoughts about, are you cool because you're eating popcorn? Are you bad because you're eating popcorn? You're just having a bunch of judgmental, thoughts about, oh, this popcorn's, stale, God damn it.
No.
Just a bunch of, should I share more of the popcorn with this person or eat it all?
Oh, should I get butter? Did I get too much butter?
Yeah.
So far removed from the co-creation of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. Just standing in judgment of it.
Yeah.
Which is an important, we're joking there, but it's like, but that's what we're doing on a universal scale. Is the ego mind, meaning we, what are we doing as egos? We're just standing in judgment of all this. All right.
Yeah.
Not only of, your bowl of popcorn, but of the universe at large.
Yeah.
And of history. Right. We're also judging history.
Right. There's some end in mind from the ego that's going to be reached via judgment of the past and present.
Yeah. And to me, that's, like in Christianity, it's the fall, it's the big sin. We're trying to play God, right? Instead of recognizing the truth and the wonder and the glory, whatever, we separate ourselves out and stand in judgment of it, even though we have a pinhole view of the whole.
Yeah.
And then our main suffering is at the hands of our own condemnation.
Yeah, the isolation that comes as part of that.
Yeah. So then when you get into these ideas of acceptance and based spiritualities, it's not just, oh, I'm going into a mindset where I accept everything. It's like, no, can you face? It's not, I accept it and it's all really good. It's like, no, it's not all really good. A lot of it's really, really bad. It's all relative, but relatively, a lot of it's really bad.
Yeah.
And can you accept the badness? Can I be down, because this idea of, let's say I can come down to this realm, and let's say this is a hell realm. Can I have my attention be seeing this realm and somehow remain conscious, which means innately compassionate and accepting, and simultaneously have my ego mind, there is nothing okay about this.
Yeah. Right.
But can I remain conscious? If I can, which means I'm going to be compassionate and accepting of it, that is also simultaneously the way one is liberated from it.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally my non-acceptance of this, right? And my refusing to be compassionate that disconnects me from the higher, that then leaves me stuck down here thinking this is the all.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most it's like, that is such an important concept.
Yeah.
Because what we all do is we look at something we don't like, and our reaction is slam the door shut to acceptance and compassion. And it's like, well, when you do that, you're not getting rid of this. You're just cutting yourself off from that. No, it's easier said than done, but I'm saying it's important to understand that.
Well, it's like it's context by context, right?
Right.
So it's like you're digging. So is that what like the downward path is, or the upward path? Like there's like uh it's like a new challenge as you dig deeper into hell, or
Right.
like face hell in like a new context. Because the ego is ready to step back in and be like, well, yeah, this is another shitty thing. Like, why would we deal with this in the same way
Right.
we dealt with that other thing we learned about? Like, no, this is a new terrible thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the digging and the whatever, I think it's obviously very complicated and the result of a lot of things. But it's like, I'm not saying, let me gouge my eyes out so that I can experience blindness, because that, it's like, no, I don't think that's.
People do that though.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
uh
But if I'm in some accident and I'm blinded, it's like, all right, well, now, now I think I'm confronted with, I've got to try to face this.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so not just digging for the sake of, let me just,
Yeah. I
um,
think it's more like you realize, like, it's not consciously digging. It's like, it seems to be like you look up and it's like, oh, I'm in a deeper hole.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you could say that, me trying to do some endurance event, it's like, 18 miles into the run, during the Ironman, I was pretty sure that I had spent the last 10 hours digging,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was in a place that felt like hell.
Yeah.
But it was like for a reason. And so, yeah, there's some, or you might decide I'm going to go on a, I'm going to go to where people are starving and volunteer,
Yeah.
try to help them, get water or whatever. And it's like, well, wow, you're going into a place that is not going to be as fun,
Yeah.
you're going to be going into a place where you're seeing suffering and seeing allure. An environment where it's, just in simple terms, more towards hell than heaven.
Yeah.
And then it's, well, maybe you're on a mission to bring a higher state of consciousness there, in addition to bringing water,
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing this sort of digging and not, but all the time. But I think like with me and my clients, I'm working with what's up for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in general, we've got plenty to deal with just with what's up.
Yeah. I hear the like digging is a dangerous word.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not what I meant.
Yeah,
Like that going looking for a problem, like that's not, then you're running from whatever is up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the good point. Yeah, there's definitely can be that.
Yeah.
So, and I know we don't have a lot of time. As far as hell, I think unfortunately we've lost touch as a culture with some of with the idea of hell, as well as with the idea of heaven. I say unfortunate because I think we're making this bandwidth that is the cognitive rational be the all, and that's a bad thing, or it's an inaccurate thing. But also, there's a lot of, like, just for example, Dante's Inferno, or Dante's 3 books are a amazing description and depiction, and I think intuitively inspired piece of knowledge that our culture should incorporate, as well as the Bible, as well as Paradise Lost, and even just some of these Western literature things, let alone all the Eastern and ancient wisdom traditions, had stuff to say about lower realms and hell. And Buddhism has its versions of it. And again, what your experience of hell is, I think varies, just like interpretations of anything. It's like, are you doing the concrete? Are you doing the literal? Are you doing symbolic? Are you taking it to be a symbolic meaning? Or are you taking it just as some kind of rational interpretation? But beyond just interpretation, my sense is there are lower realms that is very analogous to physical, the gross physical world, right? That the subtle world and the astral and the etheric and all these various planes and realms and dimensions, just like in the gross physical world, it's like, look, there's places where it's dry land, there's places where it's an ocean, there's places where it's just a nice little brook, there's places where there's fish in there but they won't harm you, there's places where there's fish in there and they will harm you. If you go down into the earth a certain depth, you're going to hit rock. If you go to a different depth, you're going to hit water. If you go to a different depth, you're going to hit fire. If you go deep enough, you're going to hit fire. You're going to hit lava. And there's places on the earth where that lava actually comes up and erupts into, onto the surface. So it's all very analogous, right? And I don't think by accident. I think it's that our consciousness works this way because it correlates. But so it's like, look, if you go down far enough, so to speak, you hit hell. If you go up enough, you literally leave the earth and go up into the atmosphere. And then if you go up far enough, you leave the atmosphere. The thing that's actually making it all go here on earth is actually the sun, as far as life, right? So hell is fire. Hell is absolute destruction. Hell is the opposite of, organization into complex life form. It's a deconstructing, and generally speaking, Satan is, and again, I'm saying this is a model. I'm like, or not, or, this is just a model that I tend to the model shows up in my mind a lot. Satan is the place in our mind that we all have that is a mechanism that functions to, like it's the lens, let's say, that lets no light in, right? It's the lens that has zero consciousness, zero compassion, zero love, zero acceptance. And worse than that, right? It's not just blind, right? Worse than that, we call it Satan because the threshold between hell, if we say hell's below, and then, there's the idea of sort of a Middle Earth, if you will, right? And then heaven above, and Middle Earth is what we tend to think of as reality. That below, like, just as I sit here, if I just do an experiential.
You're gonna end with a hell experiential?
Yeah.
Gonna be the devil.
Yeah. So I'm gonna open myself to consciousness to a certain degree. again, I'm going to say I have no idea. I'm sure that the degree is infinitesimal, but I'm going to open myself to consciousness. You're going to see a certain look and a certain light in my eyes. Right. And then I'm going to start closing it, and you'll just kind of feel that, okay, it's a drop in consciousness. It's a drop in light and love. It's a drop in inclusiveness. It's a drop in my own awareness, let alone, my awareness of others. And then I'm going to go low enough to where you're going to be able to tell that, oh, now he's shifted from, like, now he's in his own world, right? And I'm going to bring it so that it's going to express, the lower level is going to come up and then express through my mind outward. And then it's going to be, oh, he's like the devil right now, And that sounds so melodramatic, but it's like, I think we can go into an experience where we're opening ourselves up to what's below, and being a portal for it to express here. And some people will tell you, don't do that. That's terrible. You're opening up doors to hell and bringing them up into this realm, similar to, like, letting wild animals out of the, and there's some truth to that if you do it in a certain way. The way I'm going to do it, I don't think that's happening. The way I'm going to do it, I think everybody did at least once on their drive to work this morning. You know what I mean? You fucking asshole, right? Yeah. It's like, they're going into the thing and here it comes. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm not really going to go unconscious. I'm going to hold a conscious container so it's more like acting, right? But just like with acting, it's like, if you're going to do good acting, the emotion is really there. That all makes sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And so again, there's a certain point where if I'm playing the devil or if I'm playing the absolute bad guy and I do it well, I'm going to block out consciousness and just be at that energetic portal that negates all of this, but lets all of this up through. Okay, so if I just go, so I'm just going to go up, and what I'll do is I'll go down and then back up, just so there's a nice happy ending. So what I feel myself doing right now is I'm just letting go of certain contextual parameters I was holding my mind in, right? Kind of like I was talking about a certain thing. Now I'm just going back out into, okay. So you can tell that there was some kind of state shift, right? Mm-hmm. My voice sounds different. There's different stuff showing up in my awareness. I feel less focused on thought and concept, and I feel more like I'm just kind of laying on the beach or something, when you're just kind of allowing the environment to, hold you, right? And then I'm aware of, okay, and then is the environment holding me? Am I holding the environment? It all is a little non-dualish right now. Except the sun does indeed seem to be shining versus I'm in a terrible dark environment.
Yeah.
Okay. So then if I start to bring my ego mind back on the line, and it's kind of like the analogy would be, I was outside, and actually right now I don't see any clouds in the sky in Minnesota where I'm at right now. And so it's sunny, right? But if I come into my office, it's like, well, now I do have some windows, and the windows, the shades aren't down. But it's like, oh, but now this is different than when I was outside. There's a certain structure that's only letting some of the light in, right?
Yeah.
So if I come into a structure in my head right now you feel, okay, now Jeff, I'm talking to you and I'm talking about this concept, but I'm no longer in that state I was in a minute ago.
Yeah.
And of course I could sit more in this state and talk to you.
Yeah.
But then I just feel like I'm just trying to look like some kind of,
There's less of a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in this with you and I'm talking, and all right, let's get serious about this. And what are we doing? And what's the goal? And what are the parameters we're talking about? And very cognitive, rational self. And so I'm suggesting, okay, this would be more of a middle earth or personal self, or instead of soul, I'm more in mind, and I'm going to drop down towards body. I'm going to drop down towards unconscious. And this might happen if you and I start getting into more and more of a fierce argument, right? I might start getting more and more constricted in my mind. And so if I just start getting more and more constricted to where, no, I'm going to have less and less acceptance towards you and less openness. And you can see that I'm still looking at you and talking to you, but I'm not receiving any fucking thing you might have to say right now.
Yeah, driving a wedge.
Yeah. And then, but I'm saying, okay, so if this is the threshold between underworld and above it, right? And I'm just sort of sitting here like, now, fuck it. No, blocking, not allowing, not accepting, not compassionate. Go fuck yourself, right? Okay, but then if it gets worse, right? If it gets worse, if I'm going to go lower, then there's going to start to be stuff that comes up through where if I start doing this, right? Now it's like, now it's not just fuck you. Now it's like, for example, I'm going to fucking kill you. Right? Or, hey, you better watch your fucking tongue, because you can see that the energy that I'm starting to allow up through is nefarious. And this energy, you can tell, this energetic frequency and structure, there's no, I'm not converting it into compassion. It's like a torch. It's like I'm saying, look, I'm going to fucking burn you with this torch.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, is Lance evil? Is Lance the devil? It's like, no, I'm just consciously bringing my attention down into that part of the cycle. And you can tell that now I've come up out of it. And I wasn't really mad at you. I wasn't really, I just, in a similar way that I could say, no, forget it, Jeff. I'm closing my eyes. I'm not going to look at what you're trying to show.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that would be that blocking point. Only I was closing my mind. I'm just saying that when we close our mind, just like when you close your eyelids, for you, it goes dark, even though the room's still light. Right? And when you close your mind, everything goes black. Everything goes quite dark. And then if you go even lower, it's like, oh, fuck, here's all this energy that can come up through, but now you're not consciously converting it. So tell me how that looked to you, or how it impacted you.
Yeah, totally. I think just coming out of, like, I think we've talked about orienting to the conversation. So I think that's where, like, I kind of stayed as we were going. So it was like tracking like how oriented to the conversation you were.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, as you went into like more kind of aware of your physical environment, that was like the initial disconnect, where it's like, we're in different places. We're not having the same conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
And then as you became more zeroed in on your perspective, on your like kind of ego cognitive perspective, it became like the window that you were looking through kept getting smaller.
Right.
And so by the time you're like starting to split, like the thing that I said, like, felt like a wedge, it was like you weren't even looking at me anymore.
Right.
You were fighting some battle that like I wasn't even a part of.
Right.
And so the more intense that got, like, it was it's like I started to feel like, well, I need to like bring some of this up just so this guy is not alone.
Ah, really good point. Really good point.
It's like this, I mean, this is like a struggle. And it's like I see all that stuff, but then I think I just also noticed like there's uh some hesitation to like go there, to like meet you there, because it's like it's not really, in one sense, at least from like where I'm orienting from as far as our conversation, that stuff's not true. Like even conceptually because of like what we're talking about. But it's also just my own personal hesitation to get into that.
Yeah.
And so there was I could just feel that I never really met you there. And so there wasn't I couldn't like give a feedback loop to that.
Mhm.
And so you just felt more and more isolated to me
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as you were there.
Those are really good points because that's what, as you're explaining, like that's what happens to people. They're sitting there saying "fuck you, I'll kill you," and it's like, what do they need? They need compassion.
Yeah.
They need holding. They need,
Yeah. But you're
but if
so split off from it.
right,
And it was real. It was like, I mean, you did the hand motion too, but it's like you were looking at me through a pinhole by the end of it.
yeah,
And it's like, well, I don't know how to get to you through there. Like that's fucking tiny.
yeah, yeah. And then, like you're saying, it's like as I'm burning in hell behind that pinhole,
Right. Right.
which is analogous to like I'm drowning in a certain water, and it's like, Jeff, will you jump in this water? By the way, I'm being eaten by sharks right now, but will you jump in here
Yeah.
and swim with me in here and help me out? It's like, geez, it can be a tall order.
Yeah. And I think that would be good. Let me just take a note to like talk about next time, because it's um like it's relatable. Like it's not like I look at you and it's like I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, but how do you swim in that? And I think you've talked about it a lot as far as like there's just over the course of your career, like the waters that like are okay have like, broadened
Yeah.
and deepened.
Right.
But there are still things you've said that have come up and it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. Because I think so I could witness it, but there was what I didn't get to holding. Like it just there wasn't
Good. Yeah. Good point.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I, now that you say that, it's like, oh yeah, that matches my impression that you were a witness.
Yeah.
You didn't just shift into.
I didn't feel like I had to run.
Right.
Because you're containing it too. So I mean it's different. If I was like on the street and somebody came at me like that I didn't know, it's a different deal. And like I don't know if I'm there to witness that. Like that's not my right. Like I don't know if I have like loving compassion for strangers trying to attack me on the street.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good.
And that again, to use that Christian model, it's like, yeah, but Jesus literally did.
Yeah, I know.
He literally was attacked and tortured and stayed in the conscious mode.
He set the bar real high. Do you think he disassociated a little bit?
I mean, I would think so, but
just for a minute, like when the spear hit and be like, well, I'm gonna die, like let's just not worry about that. Like,
yeah, I think if we had a microphone there, there'd have been a little "go fuck yourself."
These fucking Romans.
But so does the idea of this is very sort of, I don't know, is contrite the right word? This idea, but that's what hell is, Jeff.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some idea of some kind of threshold when we go all the way to where we're not just blocking, but we become directly in touch with, again, when we dig deep enough to where, holy shit, it's not just rock, it's not just water, it's not just mud, it's become fire,
Yeah.
it's become lava. It's like you started to see lava, and I'm like, and that's when it becomes hell.
Yeah. But the translation of it into compassion. So I mean, that's an interesting thing, right? Is like that's the primary.
Yep.
We've been talking about, but it's the most isolating form of it.
Yeah.
That you can't, on some level, this is just conceptual. I don't know, like if this is true yet, but it's like as you're kind of going through it, you can't share that in the same way.
Yeah.
You could in like destructive ways, but ultimately that's not helpful. One, but two, more and more isolating. Doesn't matter how, like it's to death. Like you're going to hate to death.
Yes. Well put.
But there's that same thing as it's like brought up and like translated and transmutated becomes more expansive and inclusive and like shareable.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting because that feels more real than like well, hate is love, right? I think we said like during the last one.
Say again.
Just that we were saying last time that hate's transmutated into love, but
yeah, right. Yeah, the love hate. Get my hands on the thing. The love hate spectrum, right, becomes a circle.
Yeah.
That idea that that fire, that hate, that hell, that destruction becomes when connected with consciousness becomes passion. Which I think is where the passion of the Christ, idea comes in.
But you have to grow up, like you're saying, to experience that.
Yeah. Right. And when you die, because the idea of the surface of the earth, and then when you die, you go into the underworld, and on the gross physical level, you get buried underground, right? Is the idea.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, then what, when you go past, 6 feet deep, right? You have to encounter hell. You go through hell, right? Like the idea is when Christ died on the cross, where did he go? Well, first he went to hell.
Yeah.
And there's, again, there's all kinds of different stuff about that as far as, well, what does that mean? And what happened there?
Yeah, right.
And if it's just a metaphor for the journey of consciousness, right? If you get hit, if you get hurt bad enough, and it makes you descend into that kind of murderous rage place.
Yeah.
But then you manage to, and for whatever reasons and in whatever ways, to find compassion for the thing that you were in a murderous rage state towards, then this miraculous thing happens.
Yeah.
And you actually then it results in a deeper state of oneness and compassion.
Yeah.
Than if it had never happened.
Yeah.
And every romantic couple knows this, even if they've only been dating for a month. They've had some encounters.
Yeah.
To the extent that it's a deep connection. Like you and Sky have journeyed into layers of hell with each other.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, wouldn't you have been better off for never meeting Sky, because you'd have never been in some of the hell realms you've been in because of her.
Right.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's like, but you've managed to come back out, and now there's a bond,
and
a passion for each other and a oneness and a trust that wasn't there if you hadn't taken that journey through hell together.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We just don't. Yeah, nobody calls it hell, but like that's the. Well, some people do, but like that's not not in the constructive context.
No, right. Only when you're in the midst of it and you're blaming the other person for being the devil.
Yeah. I like that. There was something you said a while back, not that long ago, but that's helped me contextualize things. Is like when you're feeling accused, right? Like you have the self perception, like, oh, here I am, and someone's like, no, you're 3 degrees less than that, and it's like infuriating, and it's like you become the devil. But if in that moment you can be like, I'm actually already the devil. Let me move my hands up. I'm already the devil.
Yeah.
And everything between, what I think of myself and what you said, and it's kind of an empowering feeling.
Yeah.
In the face of like the threat against your self-identity. So like just remember that your many selves include the devil and the person that forgot to load the dishwasher. Like there's like hell's not all bad.
Yeah, like if I'm hearing you right, it's like there's one sort of sounds kind of corny to say it this way, but it's like you're better off if you're grounded in hell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus trying to stay up out of it.
Right.
Like, no, just accept the fact that that's there and part of your psyche is indeed in it. And you're just fooling yourself if you're, just like with swimming, it's like you're swimming and your head's above water, but listen, you're not going to swim so good that you're going to get your whole body up out of the water.
Yep.
Like we're swimming.
Simultaneous states.
Yeah.